The rain tapped a relentless rhythm against my bedroom window, a gray, monotonous soundtrack to a life that had stalled. 4 years. 4 years since the ground had swallowed my father whole. 4 years since the woman he'd married had looked at me, her eyes cold as river stones, and pronounced my sentence. You don't deserve a penny. Linda. My stepmother. The word still tasted bitter, like medicine left too long in the cup. I stared at the peeling wallpaper of my studio apartment, a far cry from the sun-drenched, book-lined study of my childhood home. That house belonged to her now. Everything did. The colonial on Maple Drive with the wraparound porch my dad had rebuilt with his own hands, the investment portfolios, the vintage car collection he'd lovingly restored. All of it seamlessly transferred to Linda Carter, widow, by the swift, unforgiving machinery of probate law. I'd fought. God, I'd fought. A furious, broke 22-year-old against a poised, well-lawyered widow. The legal aid attorney had been kind but firm. The will is ironclad, Jenna. She's the surviving spouse. You're an adult child. In this state, without a specific, substantial bequest, you have little standing. He was my father, I'd choked out, the protest sounding weak even to my own ears. The court only sees the document, he'd replied, not unkindly, and the document gives everything to her. The final hearing was a formality. Linda wore a tailored black suit, her blonde hair a perfect helmet of composure. I'd worn my one good dress, feeling childish and exposed. As the judge stamped the final decree, Linda had leaned over, her whisper a venomous cloud of Chanel No. 5. It's time to stand on your own 2 feet, sweetheart. Consider this your graduation. That was the last time I'd seen her. She'd changed the locks the next day. My boxes of childhood memories, yearbooks, stuffed animals, my mother's fragile porcelain dolls were left on the porch in a driving rainstorm. A neighbor called me, voice thick with pity. I'd salvaged what I could. The cardboard disintegrating in my hands, the ink on my first-grade drawings bleeding into ghostly smudges. Since then, life had been a grind of survival. A retail job by day, data entry by night. My dreams of art school had evaporated, replaced by the grim calculus of rent, utilities, and student loan payments for the single semester of college I'd managed before Dad died. The world had shrunk to the 4 walls of this apartment and the endless gray stretch of tomorrows that looked exactly like yesterday. My phone buzzed on the wobbly IKEA desk, shattering the gloom. An unknown number with a local area code. Telemarketer, probably. Debt collector. I almost didn't answer. But habit, that stubborn knot of hope that never quite unravels, made me swipe green. Hello? Is this Jenna Carter? A man's voice. Older, professional, with a gentle, unhurried cadence. Yes. Who's this? Jenna, this is Carlos Rodriguez. I'm calling from First National Trust and Savings. My stomach clenched. The bank. My measly checking account was probably overdrawn again. Okay, what's this about? I was your father's personal banker and trust officer for many years, Robert Carter. The air left my lungs. Dad. Nobody had said his name to me in years, not since Linda had scrubbed him from collective memory, turning him from a living, laughing man into a sterile, past-tense fact. What about him? My voice was a tight wire. I need you to come down to the bank, Jenna. There's a matter we need to discuss in person, concerning your father's estate. A bitter laugh escaped me. There's nothing to discuss. The estate was settled 4 years ago. My stepmother made sure of that. A pause on the line. I could almost hear him choosing his words with the care of a jeweler setting a stone. The public estate was settled, yes, but your father was meticulous man, a forward-thinking man. He made certain private arrangements that did not involve Mrs. Carter. I sat down heavily on my bed, the springs groaning in protest. What are you talking about? I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone. Client confidentiality and procedural security are paramount. But I can tell you this. Your father left specific, timed instructions for me. I was to contact you precisely 4 years and 1 month after his passing. He was very clear on the timeline. 4 years and 1 month. Today is April 12th. Dad died on March 10th. He'd calculated it to the day. Why the wait? I believe he wanted to ensure any initial turbulence had settled, that you'd be in a position to make clear-headed decisions. Mr. Rodriguez's voice softened. He spoke of you often, Jenna, always with such pride. He called you your little strategist. Tears, hot and sudden, pricked my eyes. He hadn't called me that since I was 10, when I'd planned a complex, multi-day treasure hunt for his birthday. The memory was a physical ache. Can you come in tomorrow, 10 o'clock? Mr. Rodriguez asked. I have work. This is important, Jenna. More important than a day's wage, I assure you. There was an authority in his tone, a gravity that brooked no argument. It was the voice of a man who kept secrets for a living and understood their weight. Okay, I heard myself say. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. The address he gave was for the bank's downtown headquarters, a pillar of granite and glass that spoke of old money and discreet service, not the suburban branch where Dad had his checking account. I called in sick to both jobs, a flutter of anxiety in my chest. Private arrangements. What could that possibly mean? A forgotten savings bond? A stock certificate stuck in a safe deposit box? It wouldn't be much. It couldn't be. Linda's lawyers had been thorough, bloodhounds in pinstripes. They'd sniffed out every asset. Yet Mr. Rodriguez's voice held a promise, a secret my father had kept, even from her. The next morning, I put on the same dress I'd worn to the final court hearing, a small, superstitious act of defiance. The downtown bank was a cathedral of finance. Marble floors echoed under my worn boots. The air smelled of lemon polish and anxiety. A discreet placard pointed me to private client services. A woman in a silent, elegant suit led me to a corner office with a view of the river. The door bore a simple brass plaque, Carlos Rodriguez, Senior Vice President, Trust and Estate Management. He rose as I entered. He was exactly as his voice had suggested, in his late 60s, with a kind, weathered face, silver hair trimmed close, and eyes that held a startling, direct intelligence. He wore a well-cut but not flashy suit. He looked like a man you could trust with a secret. Jenna, he said, coming around the desk to shake my hand. His grip was firm, warm. Thank you for coming. Please sit. I took the leather chair opposite his desk, perching on the edge. Mr. Rodriguez. Carlos, please. He settled back into his own chair, steepling his fingers. First, let me express my personal condolences, however belated. Your father was not just a client. He was a friend, a good man. His loss was deeply felt. The genuine warmth in his words undid me a little bit. Most people had offered platitudes and then quickly moved on, afraid my grief was contagious. Thank you. He was also, Carlos continued, his tone shifting into something more businesslike, though not less kind, a man who understood complexity, particularly the complexity of his own household. He came to see me about 6 months after he married Linda. He was concerned. About what?
About ensuring you were protected no matter what the future held. He was a romantic, your father, but he was also a realist. He'd seen second marriages go sideways. He'd seen children from first marriages cut out. He was determined it would not happen to you. I felt a flicker of something. Anger? Relief? Stir in my chest. He never said anything. He couldn't. He believed, rightly or wrongly, that any hint of separate planning would create irrevocable discord in his new marriage. His goal was peace in his home, while building a fortress for your future outside of it. A difficult balance. Carlos opened a slender file folder on his desk. So he instituted what we call a silent trust. A silent trust? An irrevocable trust, funded with separate property, assets that were his alone before the marriage, and others he acquired deliberately in his name only. The trust was designed to be invisible. It does not appear on any standard asset schedule. It was not part of the probate estate. Linda's attorneys, for all their thoroughness, would have had no reason to look for it and no legal mechanism to find it if they did. The room seemed to tilt. A fortress for your future. What's in it? My voice was barely a whisper. Carlos slid a single sheet of paper across the polished desk. It was a summary, stark black type on creamy bond. Carter Family Irrevocable Trust for Bio Jenna Elizabeth Carter. My eyes skimmed the figures, not comprehending. They snagged on a line at the bottom. Current principal value, $2,387,650.22. This is a mistake, I stammered, pushing the paper back as if it were hot. This can't be right. It is correct, Jenna. Your father began funding it the month after he married Linda. He contributed consistently every quarter. He also rolled in several assets, the proceeds from the sale of his first home, the one he owned with your mother, a small inheritance from his uncle that Linda never knew about, and the majority of his annual bonuses from work. He lived modestly on his salary, letting Linda believe that was all there was. The rest came here. I felt unmoored, dizzy. All those years. The arguments about money Linda would pick. Robert, we need a new car. Robert, the kitchen is dated. Robert, a vacation to Tuscany is an investment in our marriage. And Dad would often give in, but sometimes he'd hold firm, pleading cash flow. I thought he was just being frugal. Or weak. I never imagined he was funneling tens of thousands of dollars a year into a vault with my name on it. Why? The question burst out of me, raw and confused. Why go to such lengths? Why not just tell her? Make her understand I should be included? Carlos sighed, a sound of infinite patience. He tried in his way. Early on, he suggested adding you as a partial beneficiary on his investment accounts. Linda's reaction was, he told me, volcanic. She viewed it as a betrayal, a sign that he was still tied to his past life, that he didn't consider their new family unit to be whole. He learned then that reason would not work. So he chose subterfuge. He chose to protect you in the only way he felt he could, in secret. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small, rectangular safe deposit box key, placing it on top of the trust summary. This is for you, box 714. Your father left letters, one for each year until you turned 30. He wrote them in advance and left them with me. He also left a final letter, to be given to you when the trust was disclosed. I picked up the key. It was cold, heavy, real. The trust terms are straightforward, Conclean. You are the sole beneficiary. You have full access to the principal and any growth now that you're over 21, and the triggering event, the 4-year waiting period, has passed. The funds are held in a diversified portfolio of equities, bonds, and real estate investment trusts. My team has managed it per your father's conservative growth mandate. My advice for what it's worth would be to take some time. Don't make any sudden decisions. This is life-changing capital, and it should be treated with respect and planning. I just stared at him, trying to absorb the magnitude of it. $2.3 million. A secret life my father had been living, a parallel financial universe where I was the center. What's about Linda? I finally asked. When she finds out? His expression grew stern. She has no claim. Zero. This was separate property, placed in an irrevocable trust before their marriage reached the 10-year mark that might have given her a community property interest under state law. He timed it perfectly. If she finds out and attempts to challenge it, she will lose, spectacularly and expensively. We have a file of contemporaneous memos, emails, and signed acknowledgments from your father stating his intent to keep this asset separate for your benefit. It is a legal fortress, Jenna, as he intended. He stood up. Would you like to see the box now? Wordlessly, I nodded. The vault was in the sub-basement, behind a door that required 2 keys and a retinal scan from Carlos. It was cold, silent except for the hum of climate control, wall after wall of polished steel doors, each with 2 keyholes. He led me to 1714, inserted his master key, and nodded for me to use mine. The click was satisfyingly solid. The box slid out smoothly. It was heavier than I expected. Inside, there were no stacks of cash, no gold bars, just a bundle of letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon, my favorite color as a girl, and a single thicker envelope on top, with my name written in Dad's familiar looping script. My hands shook as I picked up the thick envelope. I couldn't open it here, not under the fluorescent lights of the vault with Carlos standing by. This was a moment for solitude. Take your time, Carlos said gently, as if reading my mind. I'll be upstairs. The box is yours. You can leave the contents here or take them. It's entirely up to you. Thank you, I managed to say. He gave a slight bow of his head and retreated, his footsteps echoing softly down the corridor, leaving me alone with my father's secret. I sat on the small stool provided, the cold of the steel box seeping through my dress. I untied the ribbon. There were 10 letters, each dated on the front, for Jenna on her 23rd birthday, for Jenna on her 24th birthday, all the way to for Jenna on her 30th birthday. He'd written them all before he died, entrusting them to a man he believed would outlive him and honor his wishes. But it was the thick, undated envelope I opened first. My dearest Jenna, if you are reading this, then Carlos has found you and 4 years have passed. I'm so sorry for the silence and for the confusion I know this must cause. Please believe me when I say that every difficult choice I made for you. You are reading this because I'm gone, and Linda has, in all likelihood, taken everything the world can see. I loved Linda, in my way, but I knew her nature. I knew her capacity for possession, for seeing love as a ledger sheet. I saw how she began to view you not as my daughter, but as a competitor for resources, for attention, for my heart. It was a flaw I could not fix, so I worked around it. The money in the trust is not just money. It is your freedom. It is the down payment on a life lived on your own terms, without having to ask anyone for provision or permission. It is my apology for bringing a storm into your life in the form of a new wife. It is my promise that, though I failed you in some ways while I was living, I would not fail you in death. Use it to go back to school if that's your dream. Buy a home that is yours alone. Travel. Make art. Start a business. Make mistakes. Splurge on something foolish and wonderful. This is your foundation. Build whatever you want upon it. The yearly letters, they're just a father's ramblings. Advice I won't be there to give. Pride I won't be there to express. A way to feel like I'm still walking beside you for a little while longer. You don't have to read them on the birthdays. You can binge them all today or save them for when you need a dose of your old dad. I won't know the difference, but I hope they help. I have one final request, my little strategist. Be smart. Be careful. Linda must not know about this, not until you are unassailably secure. If she learns of it, she will come for it with lawyers and anger and a sense of wounded entitlement. Carlos will help you navigate that if it happens. But your best defense is silence and time. Let her believe her narrative that you got nothing. Let her have that victory. Your victory will be the life you build, quietly and surely, out of the light. I loved you from the moment you were born. I love you as I write this. I will love you always. Never doubt that you were and are my greatest treasure. Go be magnificent, Dad. Tears fell freely now, spotting the thick paper. They were not just tears of grief, but of a staggering, overwhelming revelation. The letters were a physical weight in my hands, a tangible connection to a voice I thought I'd lost forever. I couldn't read them all there, in the sterile chill of the bank vault, with Carlos standing by. This was a moment for solitude. Carlos Rodriguez was waiting in his office when I returned upstairs. He took one look at my face, surely red-eyed and stunned, and offered a small—
The realtor Carlos recommended, Eleanor Vance, was a study in quiet efficiency. She was in her 50s with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing and a voice that never rose above a conversational tone. She understood the assignment immediately. Find a safe, comfortable, but utterly unremarkable apartment for a client who valued privacy above square footage. We looked at places in neighborhoods Linda would never frequent, up-and-coming areas with more artists than country club members, mixed-use buildings with small businesses on the ground floor, no doorman buildings, no flashy amenities, just clean, secure, and anonymous. We found it in a renovated brick building in the Arts District, a one-bedroom with high ceilings, original hardwood floors, and a small balcony overlooking a shared courtyard garden. The kitchen was updated, but modest. The building had a key fob entry system and security cameras, but no concierge to note my comings and goings. It was perfect. Lease will be under Carter Holdings LLC, Eleanor explained as we filled out paperwork at a small cafe. All correspondence comes to my office. Rent is paid automatically from the trust's operating account. You're just the authorized occupant. It adds a layer of insulation. The move was swift and surgical. I didn't hire movers. I didn't want strangers in my space. Over a weekend, with the help of my only close friend, Maya, I packed my meager belongings from the studio apartment into a rented van. My new furniture, a comfortable sofa, a proper desk for my design work, a real bed, was delivered from stores that catered to corporate housing, ordered and paid for by the LLC. Nothing was delivered to my name. By Sunday evening, I was sitting in my new living room, the setting sun painting stripes of gold across the floor. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. Quiet, peaceful, and most importantly, invisible. I quit my retail job the next week, telling the manager I was moving out of state for a family opportunity. Carlos structured a slightly larger monthly disbursement to cover my increased rent and living expenses, still masked as income from Carter Strategic Solutions. To the outside world, it looked like I'd landed a steady remote job, a modest but believable step up. My days took on a new rhythm. Mornings were for my design coursework. Afternoons were spent building a portfolio, fake brands, reimagined logos, website mock-ups. Evenings, I started taking on tiny freelance jobs from online platforms, building a reputation under the pseudonym J. Carter Design. The work paid peanuts, but that wasn't the point. It was building a real track record, a digital paper trail that had nothing to do with my father's money. I was building a life, brick by invisible brick. For a year, the strategy worked perfectly. I completed my certification with distinction. My freelance profile began attracting better clients. I even landed a small, ongoing contract with a local indie publisher to design book covers. The income from it was real, earned, and mine. I opened a separate business checking account for it, a point of immense personal pride. I visited the vault every few months, reading a birthday letter from my dad. Each one was a treasure, full of dad jokes, earnest advice, and memories that anchored me. They were my secret compass. Linda, as far as I could tell, remained oblivious. I kept my social media profiles barren and locked down. I didn't reconnect with any old family friends. I was a ghost in the city she ruled. The first crack in my careful facade came from an unexpected direction. My cousin Sarah, on my mother's side. We'd never been close, but she found me on LinkedIn, drawn by my design portfolio. Jenna, oh my God, it is you. Your work is gorgeous. I had no idea you were doing this. Listen, I'm planning my wedding and I'm desperate for an invitation designer. Would you ever consider taking on a family client? My heart sank. A family client. The one thing I couldn't risk.
But Sarah had been kind to me as a kid. She was also, crucially, not connected to my father's side of the family. She had no relationship with Linda. After consulting with Carlos, keep it professional, keep it distant, invoice formally, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop, and it was nice. She gushed about my designs, told me about her fiancé, and not once asked probing questions about my life or finances. She just wanted beautiful invitations. The job went smoothly. I delivered the designs, she paid my invoice promptly, and we parted with warm wishes. It felt like a normal human interaction, devoid of the baggage of my past. It gave me a dangerous glimmer of hope. Maybe a normal life was possible. That glimmer was what led to my mistake. Sarah's wedding was a month later. She invited me, of course. "Just come to the ceremony," she pleaded. "It's at St. Mark's and the reception is at the Laurent Hotel. You don't have to stay long." I shouldn't have gone. Carlos would have advised against it. My own common sense screamed against it. But the desire to be a normal person at a normal family event to celebrate something happy was too strong. I told myself it would be safe. St. Mark's was a huge cathedral. The Laurent was a massive hotel. I could slip in, watch her walk down the aisle, and slip out before the reception crowd mingled. I wore a simple navy dress, nothing memorable. I arrived just as the music started and took a seat in the very back pew, behind a pillar. The ceremony was beautiful. Sarah glowed. I felt a genuine pang of happiness for her. As the recessional music played, I stood to leave, keeping my head down. I was almost to the massive oak doors when I heard the voice. The voice that could still freeze my blood. "Well, look what the cat dragged in." I turned slowly. Linda stood there, resplendent in a pale lavender suit, a hat with a small veil perched on her head. She was with two of her bridge club friends, their eyes wide with gossipy curiosity. Sarah's mother, my aunt, had apparently invited the whole extended family tree, Linda included. "I'm just here for Sarah," I said, my voice thankfully steady. "How philanthropic of you," Linda purred as her eyes did that quick, assessing sweep. The dress, the simple clutch, the understated earrings. Her gaze lingered on my shoes, low-heeled leather pumps, good quality, but not designer. "You clean up adequately, I'll give you that. That remote job must be treating you acceptably?" "It is," I said, turning to go. "The reception is at the Laurent," one of her friends chirped, oblivious to the tension. "You must come. The crab cakes are supposed to be divine." "I have another commitment," I said firmly. "Of course you do," Linda said, her smile saccharine. "Probably a shift at the 24-hour copy center?" Her friends tittered politely. I didn't dignify it with a response. I walked out of the church, my calm evaporating with every step. Idiot. Arrogant, sentimental idiot. I'd broken the first rule, stay invisible. I'd wandered into the lion's den for a moment of normalcy. The blowback was faster than I anticipated. 2 days later, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize, but with a familiar area code. I let it go to voicemail. "Jenna, it's Bill Hendricks," Linda's lawyer. His voice was smooth, patronizing. "I'm calling on behalf of Linda Carter. She'd like to schedule a meeting with you. There are some concerns about potential misappropriated assets from your father's estate that have recently come to light. Please call me back to avoid this becoming more formal." My blood ran cold. Misappropriated assets. She hadn't figured out the trust knot yet, but she'd seen me at the wedding, looking not destitute. It had sparked her suspicion. She was fishing, throwing out a legal net to see what she might catch. I forwarded the voicemail to Carlos. He called back within minutes. "She's bluffing," he said, his voice calm. "She has no specifics because there are none to find. But this is a tactical escalation. She's trying to scare you into a meeting where she hopes you'll say something revealing, or better yet, from her perspective, offer a settlement to make her go away." What do I do? Nothing. You ignore it. If he calls again, you say, "I have no knowledge of any misappropriated assets. Any further communication on this matter should go through my attorney." Then you give him my name and number. Do not
Engage. Do not explain. Do not apologize. But what if she... Jenna, Carlos interrupted gently but firmly, this is what the fortress was built for. This is the first test of the walls. We do not waver. We do not negotiate. We hold the line. I took a deep breath. Okay, good. Now, I want you to do something for me. This weekend, take some of your earned money from your design business, go buy yourself something frivolous and wonderful, and remember why you're doing this. Not just for the money, but for the freedom to tell people like Bill Hendricks to go pound sand. I followed his advice. That Saturday, I used $200 from my book cover design fee to buy a stunning abstract art print from a struggling local artist at a street market. I hung it in my living room, a splash of defiant color. It wasn't bought with trust money. It was bought with my skill, my effort. It was a tangible reminder of the life I was building for myself. I didn't answer Bill Hendricks's call. He called 2 more times. On the 3rd call, I answered, recited my line exactly as Carlos had instructed, and gave him Carlos's information. The sputtering silence on the other end was deeply satisfying. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, a formal-looking letter